Alright, it's been a while, so I figured I'd do another video and get my plants back in order. First of all, you need a razor blade to make sure you can make clean cuts. And you also need a lighter to make sure it's your blade sterilized, so you don't transfer any viruses or something. So have a rather nice lighter. Does the job quite quickly. Oh, there's some wax on there. With that burns off now. Oh, that's a nice color. Nice purple. It's a bit hot still. So. Well, I guess that will do the job just fine. Need to refill my lighter a bit. At least the blade's sterile. I've cleaned up the water in the, all the moisture in the tiny greenhouse, so it's as clean as possible without actually using a lot of chemicals. So there won't be any mold developing despite the high humidity in there. Oh, that should do the trick. Let's see, yeah, that's a lot better. I just need to warm it a little bit more. And voila. Time to start cutting. What you want is some nice mature end clades, so I'll find some from here, like this. And if you have decided to use an entire plant or a few branches to do the grafting, you can cut the top of a different clade so it's already cut, so that's easier. And also that means you don't damage the bottom end where the roots will come from. Because if you damage the bottom end, it might just callus and not root very easily. But like this, you can just tear it off, the excess, and there you have two very nice ends. And then I put it in some water because they're quite dusty, so I figured there might be some mold spores on there as well. And I'll just do a whole batch at once. That's just easier, because I'll do probably like 100 or a few hundred grafts today, and I'll put most of them in there. And once I'm done with cleaning of the grafting stock, I'll put them on here to dry again, because once they're dry I can do the actual grafting. So the plants first need to heal a little bit, or at least get less moist so they don't develop mold as easily, or you don't want to get water in between the joints, because with water in between the joints it might also damage the joint. You can see I'm quite ruthless today, using a lot of stock, because this will all be grafting stock. It's a healthy variety from Rosa Danica. I've used this variety because it's rather big, rather upright, easily rooting, flowering well. So all kinds of reasons that works well. It absorbs water easily. Alright, I'll cut 3 of the 4 cuttings, or the 4 plants in this pot. So I have plenty of grafting stock, yet still have 1 plant to flower this winter. because some flowers would be nice as well. Let's see, a few more. So there you go. Just a few more. Well, that's just about it. Those might start sprouting on the sides as well, or from the clade below, so I think I will do with a bit of delicate cutting work. Take those as well, because the top end has been cut already and it isn't woody, so you can use it very well. And if you got a little bit of practice, you can also cut just the vascular bundle in the middle, so you don't damage the rooting part of it, so you got some more grafting stock. And once this is complete, I will start preparing the science, because preparing the stocks isn't as much work. Also, don't really need to be labeled. It is better to label them if you are seriously considering doing this long term, because then it would be nice to have a standard grafting stock that you know reacts well to your growing medium. And also, it's just nice to have a stock you know that works well for grafting, because I don't really know how well this one will work, but given my prior experience, I think this one will work very well, as it has very succulent clades and also takes up water easily, grows well in standard peat-based soils, and it's nice and upright, so it should provide more structure for the science. Not science as in the topic, but as in the thing that goes onto the grafting stock. Alright, it's getting a little bit more difficult now, because let's see, because I need to turn around to find the vascular bundles, but those will be excellent grafting stocks as well, as long as they are not woody. And this will also ensure that the remaining cuttings will sprout nice and wide again, with like 4 to 5 or 6 clades from the previous clade, because they have a lot more energy to spare now. And sometimes you aren't able to salvage an entire top areola, so that's where the growth comes from, at the top of the leaf. If you preserve them as much as possible, you will have more new growth from those at the new growing season. As you can see, I saved one to flower this winter, because I might want to cross it with something, or just like the flowers. But I will continue picking off some tiny clades. Right. Those clades that have been damaged are not the ideal clades to work with, as this might mold over, or I don't know, develop rot. So I'll keep that apart. Oh, this one I can use as well. On the pile it goes. That's just about it for this plant. Just a few more and I'm done. Then I'll do a batch of grafts. I'll note which grafting stock I used and which science. And the science I will mark on the clades themselves, but the stocks I will mark in my phone, so I I will use one stock for maybe 12 to 15 varieties. Doing that, it's just easier to mark it in my phone, and then I can see which ones do best on that grafting stock when I use it again, or which grafting stock works best for future reference. It's quite a tedious job, but if you do like 100, like I'm planning to do, it's worth the trouble, as all this trouble will result in all those difficult to grow plants suddenly being a lot easier to grow, as now I don't have a very finicky root system, but a very robust root system from this variety, instead of the species root system from the Schlumbergera, which is notoriously hard to grow on its own roots, for some at least, and I just think it's more convenient to be able to use my regular potting mix for everything. So for me it's more about convenience than anything else, to be honest. But if you need to save anything, like you got rotten cutting you received and then only have half a clade left, you can usually make a fair amount of grafts from that, like 3 or 5 or maybe just 1, but even having 1 successful graft from a failing cutting is a win, a bonus. And it means you don't have to purchase it again. This is the end result for the grafting stock donor. As you can see, most of the growth points at the end are still intact, so it will sprout again from there next year or at the end of this summer. I'll put it back now as it so it can, so it's back in its normal place and can grow again. I got those grafting stocks in autumn last year, so they've been here for almost a year, and during that time they haven't really grown. I've done that on purpose, so they will have the maximum amount of stored energy in there, which means once they are grafted and the cuts have healed and everything has grown together, they should start growing very quickly, and that's just easier for me, so I will have bigger plants more quickly. And now I'm just cleaning them. I'll put them on the paper after to make sure they dry as well, because it's just easier to work with dry materials, so that not everything tends to stick together. And you really want to make sure there's not much of the bottom clade left on the bud there, so because this material will usually try to callus over or just rot away if it's left on there. So the least, the less excessive material you have on there, the more likely it is to root easily and well. As you can see, I've made a little mistake there. It's cut there now. It's not really great, but I figure if I just keep it this way, it will grow back together eventually, right along with graft growing to the top of it. So there's a little bit of a bud on the left, tiny little thing of the vascular bundle from the clay below. That's not too bad, but ideally it should be gone, but the effects are negligible. As those things will usually sprout roots just the same. So first you clean the grafting stocks. I'm almost done here, well, like halfway for the first batch. Second batch will probably be in a week, maybe 2, or maybe a few days, I don't know yet, because I'm quite busy working at the garden center and making sure everything there is running smoothly as well. And together with the garden center and my girlfriend, I just don't have a lot of time left to take care of my plants as my mental health, as I think it should, has priority for me. So most of the days after work I'll just relax and not do much, maybe water some plants, but that's about it. So honestly, it's just not the easiest job in the world to try and run the outer planting department of a garden center, but I really enjoy it. Alright, the bowl is full. I'll start cleaning them now. I put a little bit of cleaning product in here so the dust will come off easier, and also I hope it will kill some of the bacteria or fungus spores on the clade. So this should also reduce the risk of mold or rot or other issues. So basically, the cleaner they are, the greater your chance at success. That was a cut clade, so I hope it will pull through, and if I notice any rot I will pull it out. Try to graft the cyan again on a different clade, but if that doesn't work I'll just throw it away, as you don't want any contamination in there, because once it establishes itself it can spread very rapidly and kill just about all of the grafts in there before they are grown together well enough to survive on their own. And usually it takes about 1 or 2 weeks for them to grow together well enough to be planted without any issues. And also once they are ready to plant, they are, let's see, after 2 weeks or so they will just always be ready to plant, and once planted and rooted there shouldn't be any real issues left, except for when you do it too late in the year and the flowering period for the grafting stock has already triggered the bud formation. So I hope that's not the case, and I will also put them under lights every few evenings so the budding cycle isn't triggered, as I will do a lot of aerial grafts. So that's aerial, I don't exactly know how to pronounce it properly. That's a tiny growth point on the side. It's just in the little piece in between there, and you don't see anything here yet, but it has the potential to grow a new leaf or a bud. So if I graft just one of those and one of those and one of those and one of those, I will have 4 grafts, but they are useless to me if they all produce flower buds. So I will keep them under lights to prevent that from happening. That should save me a lot of losses and a lot of trouble, because once that one aerial is spent it usually doesn't produce a new leaf from there. So you really want to use those aerials wisely, and on the grafting stock you can just leave them on, as usually the apical dominance will result in the cyan growing despite grafts on the side, despite the aerials on the side there that are still there, as vascular bundles in the leaf are strongest in the center. That's why you can see a little stripe in there. Also here a tiny hill in the basically valley. It always goes straight to the top, or just about always, and the vast majority of transporting tissue is in the center, so that's why just about always new growth will be from the top and not from the sides. Alright, my paper is almost full. Then I will grab a few cultivars. I don't think I'll do all of the grafting today, maybe just a third of my collection, but once I'm done I should have, instead of like 20 to 25 cultivars or 20 to 25 plants, I should have around 150, maybe 200 plants, and once they're back to good health I can of course sell them off or give them away if I want, but I can probably sell them at work too if I really want to. That's the advantage of working at the garden center. I can shed some of my excess plants for some nice pocket money, as I would say, because it just isn't a lot of the profit margins aren't that big on there. But if I have any excess I can just sell it just as easily, and also that just safeguards my own collection, as I always have backups on hand once this process is done. And also, if you have any virus plants, usually you will see it within a month or a month and a half, or like 6 weeks, because then the grafting stock will start showing spots or yellow brownish lines, which happened to me a while ago with Kajaribi or Kajaribi. I don't know how to pronounce it as it's Japanese, but that one came to me virused, and within, I would say, 4 weeks it was apparent that they were actually virused, because grafting stocks were developing weird yellowish lines of very unhealthy tissue, which told me something was wrong. Not exactly what was wrong, but I knew it couldn't be good if the grafting stocks were all starting to fail, as it wasn't like just one or two doing it, but all of them, which meant it came from the cyan and not from the environment, as they were in the same pot as little fire grafts I did with the same grafting stock, same batch of plants, yet all of the Kajaribi started deteriorating while all of the little fire were fine. I mean, they were actually growing happily while the Kajaribi were deteriorating quickly, and I think within 2 months all of them had died. So needless to say, I stopped growing that cultivar. I mean, its flower is very beautiful. It's like a red, and it has very small clades. It's very much Buckley like, with its Russelliana parentage. But I figured I would just try and make something new that's not virused. So maybe in a year or two I will have a better variety than Kajaribi, with crossing like Little Fire to, I don't know, to George Gardner, as that is a red Buckley type already. It just is a lot bigger than Kajaribi. Or I would cross number 11 from Christina with Russelliana, or with Little Fire to get a, if I cross with Little Fire I will probably get a Truncata dominant seedlings from it, but maybe also some smaller size ones, which would be great, because my eventual goal is to create a line of miniature Schlumbergera, just because they are much more convenient to have in the house, as a regular sized plant can grow to a meter across or even more, whereas the miniature will probably stay within half a meter, at least for the foreseeable future, and usually even stay smaller if they are not housed very generously. That's almost done. Just a couple more, just some more paper, and also make sure it's clean paper, and try to keep the place as well ventilated as possible to avoid any contamination. Well, that's the last of it. As you can see, the ones I cleaned just now are looking very shiny, not dusty at all like the plant they came from. That should also reduce the risk of them rotting or just having any issues at all. Let's see. 26 minutes, wow. I've really been talking a lot so far. Alright, time for a second sheet. So, to house all of the grafting stock, and also some of the science later. But I'll put the grafting stock here, and the clean science I'll put here, so they are out of the way of my working area, so I don't throw them on the ground or anything, as I don't have a lot of science, but I do have a lot of grafting stocks, so they are much more disposable to me. That's also why I will start putting them on the bottom here and work my way up, as I might need space to put some of the grafting stocks on here. Also, some of the science have been attacked by the red mites, those nasty little things. They are red, hardly visible, and usually the first signs are a dimpled look on the clade, or at least a very rough surface with, I don't know, usually around the joints between two leaves, there the scarring usually starts. That's where they like being the most, as that's where they are the most protected between the hairs, or at least the kind of woolly stuff on the end, the bristles, as they like to fit in between there. So I have treated them, and I will treat them again a few days after the grafting is done, just to avoid any cross-contamination of any insect cross-contamination, as I really would hate it, would hate for the pests to spread to all of my different plants, as I have kept them fairly isolated so far, and I would like to totally eradicate them, but some of the material I got in has also been infected, so basically what I need to do is quarantine all of my plants, a concept you should be fairly familiar with now. And after quarantine, during quarantine, I will treat them probably twice, so once when I got the time to spray it properly, and then a second time a week and a half or almost 2 weeks later, as that's interval between which pests haven't really recovered yet from treatment, but also long enough to not harm the plant or you don't want to harm the plant, so you should wait a little bit. But if you wait too long, it will give the critters a chance to get back on their feet and repopulate the plant, and also that treating too late might help building their resistance against the pesticides you use. So basically what I recommend is just treating it twice in a week and a half, and then hope it's gone, and if it's still there you have to find another treatment to avoid resistance as much as possible, as nobody's helped with resistant insects, because that just means it becomes harder and harder to treat them. And if you treat with a different insecticide after the second treatment with the first one, it will probably kill the remainder of the population, unless it has been totally resistant from the first pesticide you used. Then you should also note it and maybe tell some other growers about it, as a completely resistant pest is just a pain in the ass to deal with, and it should be known amongst collectors to avoid it as much as possible spreading to different plants. I got mine in here. As you can see, it's just about 3/4 of the way full. I treated this one Maude or Maud a few hours ago. It's been soaking for a while. That should give those little critters a run for the money, or get rid of them completely, and I would be very glad to have that happen, as those little things have been ruining the fun for just about 2 years, I think, or I mean just about 4 or 5 years. It's been way too long spent dealing with those nasty little things. But in the garden center I've learned a lot, also about treatment of mites and stuff, as I've had a lot of experience just trying to control all the different pests in there. It's a shit show if it's not managed properly, but if it is, you should have barely any issues with all of the different pests that can be there. Only a few plants that were infected last year at the garden center have still not been cleaned up entirely, so I guess those will be disposed of, like a few palms, as there were kind of aphid on there, like the ones with a shell. We call them dopluizen in the Netherlands, but I forgot the international term, or the English one. As you can see, I am cleaning the grafting stock now. Then I will label them, and after labeling I will use them. Like, I will put the initials of the cultivar on there in a way that it can be confused with any other cultivars I'm grafting. So like for Little Pot of Gold, I will put L and G on there, as in little and gold. Number 11 I will name N, so the letter N, and then the number 11, as that should be sufficient to keep them separated. And like Savannah, it will be just an S, or maybe SAV, or yeah, I think it will be SAV. I also got some attention on my hybrids that have been badly injured by the nasty red mites, so those will be grafted as well, and it will be TNMH as intentional my hybrid. Those are from different collectors in the Netherlands, which sold seeds a few years ago, and I germinated them and I grafted them back then, but due to root aphids and then the thrips and then the red mites, they've never really taken off. I mean, they grew and they're still alive 2 or 3 years later, but they're just not in a very good shape. They're a little anemic, and the grafting stocks are just about dead, as are the, they're just not in a good shape. So I will graft end clades and some of this as well. And I've treated them a week and a half ago, so I will treat them again today while grafting, or I mean after the grafting process is done, so everything gets an equal dose, and that should also help contain the spread of those nasty little things that have been bugging me for way too long. Alright, it's time to start grafting. This is number 11 from Christina Giasfond. And personally, I'm a big fan of that variety, as it's very easy to grow. It's nice and upright. Clade shape is beautiful. It has a very easy root system. And now we will start counting the growth points, as I will try to make as much grafts from this as possible. So here there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, obviously, the end of it. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 grafts can be made from this in total. I will try to make 14 grafts from it. So this is 14. Let's clean it a little bit, as I don't want anything to stick on there. And this one has the base of it has succumbed to the red mites as well. As you can see, it rotted because those things suck from the epidermis, and by doing that